And now that we've got the sound in our room as ideal as possible, it's now time to dial in the mic that we're gonna use and the settings that we're gonna choose for it. So here, I personally am deciding to go with a boom arm that's holding a directional shotgun mic. Now, these mics are great for only picking up directly what's in front of the microphone. It's not really picking up what's on the side. It's not picking up what's behind the microphone. So this is ideal for really having this just barely out of frame, as close to the sound source, which would be you talking, as possible, but hidden out of frame. We don't have to attach it to the body, and that's why I'm going with it for this new setup. In the past, I've used the Sennheiser AVX system, which is an excellent lavalier setup, but I really don't want to have to deal with putting on, taking off the microphones, charging the batteries. I just want to be able to sit down, hit record, and get going. So that's a really good deciding factor when choosing what microphone you want to use. If you're walking around or you have multiple people that need multiple microphones in maybe an interview situation, a lavalier microphone would be great. But really, there's no right or wrong decision here. The main goal is to be recording in a room that's set up as best as possible, which we've taken care of, and to get the microphone as close to you as possible while you're speaking. So you could be using a wired lavalier that's going into your smartphone. You could be using a wireless lavalier going into your DSLR. You could be using a shotgun microphone like this going into your Zoom recorder. All those are fine, but what I would not recommend is having your microphone set to automatic settings or having your microphone on top of your camera somewhere across the room from where you're shooting. Because as I start to move away from this microphone, all the air and all the space between me and the microphone starts to create a really not desirable recording. So as I move closer, you can clearly see and hear the clarity in my voice, the resonance in my voice, and more of the depth in my voice that the microphone is able to pick up at this closer distance. So now that you understand a little bit more about microphone placement, and you're not going to be putting it on the other side of the room, now let's get into your settings. And as I mentioned, I'm using a Zoom H4n, which is simply a handheld recorder that allows for me to plug my microphone in through an XLR cable and record my audio directly to an SD card. Now, if I was recording on a camera that already had XLR inputs, or if I was using a microphone that had that standard audio jack output, I would go directly into the camera. So you don't specifically need to be using an external recorder. Of course, you can go directly into your camera, but if you are using an XLR output or you're recording multiple audio channels, then something like a Zoom is a really great option. And as I'm speaking into the microphone here, you can really see that it's peaking between -24 and -12. Now that's okay, but I really like to get my audio peaking at around -6. Now this will really capture all of your voice without you having to turn it up in post-production a whole lot. And it'll leave 6 decibels and a little space of room so that you don't peak or you don't hit 0. You don't want to hit 0 because that means the information in your recording went so high that it's actually going to be distorting when you listen back to it. Once that's recorded and it's distorted, that that rhymed, but there's no way to change or take out that distorted sound. So when you're setting your levels manually, you want to do a pretty big range of speaking. You want to speak loudly and you want to speak a little bit more quietly. And you want to make sure that you're getting a decent input where you're not dipping really below -24 or -20, and you're not getting too close or definitely not hitting 0. So when I'm setting up my mic, I always speak a little bit louder than I normally do, just in case there's a moment in the recording where I'm laughing or decide to yell something. I know ahead of time that this is not going to clip and distort. So you want to keep things a little bit on the lower end, turn it up a little bit in post-production. This is the same exact process if you're going, let's say, through a lavalier microphone directly into your camera. You're going to want to go to your audio settings and set it to manual and adjust the input level to do the same thing I just did here with the zoom. And once you've got your audio levels set up, you want to make sure that whatever you're using to record is recording at the highest quality possible. For me, that's a WAV file at 24-bit. I also have the option to use an MP3 format at the highest settings, but file formats like MP3s are compressed. So that means that your recorder is already compressing things and changing the depth of the quality. So just take a few extra moments and Google or YouTube the highest settings for whatever device you're using to record your audio. So as you can see, I have my microphone just out of frame, pointing directly at my kind of throat and chest area. This is going to ensure that it's picking up all the sound that's projecting from your mouth. If I were to aim it more directly at my mouth or at my head, if I were to kind of move forward a little bit, you can imagine it would be like me turning away from this microphone while I'm speaking. It's not going to be getting that resonance from where all that sound is vibrating from. And that goes for a lavalier mic or any other kind of mic. You want to have the piece of the microphone that's gathering all the data to not be obstructed by any object, or if it's clipped to your shirt, you don't want it to be obstructed by any clothing, and it should be aimed directly at where all the resonance of sound is coming from. And now that we've got our microphone settings and locations ready to go, now it's time to dial in our lighting and camera. Oh, and we're getting to see a sneak peek here of the final product. Don't pay attention to that. We're not supposed to see that yet. Let me remind myself to blur this out in the edit. Hey, Julian, when you're putting this edit together, can you actually blur out the rest of the room? Yeah, that's perfect. And go ahead and bring down the exposure a little bit. Okay, that's perfect. No, bring the blur back. Yeah, bring the blur back. Yeah. And turn down the exposure. Okay. Man, I gotta get a new editor.